Okay. It is 6:38. Let's call this meeting of the CDAC to order. Let's first start out with attendance. Let's start on this side. Deb,
Deborah Hogan, mayoral appointee.
thank you.
Kenya Middleton, ex officio.
Marianne Callahan, mayoral appointee.
John Brunza, mayoral appointee.
Ebony Hato, District 4 and Secretary.
Justin McGregor, District 7, Chair.
Michelle O'Loughlin, at-large appointee.
Is it
Abby
green?
Green.
Jordan Trice, District 5.
Welcome aboard, Jordan.
Mhm.
All right. So I need everyone get to the minutes from the previous January 17th meeting. Did you have time to go over them? If so, is there any discussion on said minutes, or do we have a call
I'll
to-
make a motion to approve the minutes of January 17th, 2024.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody oppose? Seeing none, unanimously accepted. All right, we're going to have a little bit of an agenda adjustment. For those of you who don't know, our vice chair resigned since the January 17th meeting. Would you like explanation,
Sure, why not?
Stephen?
He resigned his company, well, economic development, this thing not
Oh.
again. Under a conflict of interest, so he chose to resign.
Great, thank you for that information.
All right, so that means we need to find a vice chair amongst those in attendance. There is no rule of having served a year to be vice chair, although experience is encouraged. Do we have any nominations on the floor?
I'll nominate Marianne Callahan.
Any other nominations? Or a second?
Should we come?
I second.
All right. Any other nominations? No? Seeing none? We have a vote for Marianne Callahan for vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none? Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you like to move here or you want to stay there?
I shall move, no, I shall stay with my friends.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for being kind.
Thank you. No, loyalty is everything in here. Okay. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Welcome back and welcome aboard.
We'll get it in the-
All right, so that brings us to our agenda points now of department presentations. First, the mayor's office. Thank you, and we're sorry for the delay. There's no public session for this today. There's no public session for this today?
There's one next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, city council does. Not today. What? It's
If you-
important.
If you want, after this meeting, if you want, ma'am, I can, hello, ma'am. Hi. If you want, after this meeting, I could talk to you if you'd like. But right now there isn't a public comment, but after this meeting, I'd be happy to talk to you if that's okay.
Well, this isn't the council.
It's a,
Tanya is our representative on city council.
yes, I'm a representative. I'm not, but I can relay it to her. If you want to wait till after this, I definitely can talk to you and I could relay it to your council person that represents that district, if that's okay. And then she can come back to you and talk to you. No, I understand that. I would definitely like to talk to you after that.
Or
if it's-
just-
That's okay.
We're just not city council. We are the CDAC. So that's why there's no public comment. We're in the middle of our department presentations currently. And we're starting with the mayor's office.
Mhm.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me. As we've done in past years, it's difficult to give any concrete numbers at this stage of the game, but I'm happy to be down here tonight to talk about some of the mayor's funding priorities and answer any questions you might have in regards to that to the extent that I can. So generally speaking, we're looking to continue providing support for many of the programs and initiatives that we have in recent years that you're all very familiar with. But there are a few specific areas that I was hoping to spend a little bit of time on, a little bit more time on tonight. The first one being the Blighted Properties and Demolition Program. As you might know, in December, at the very end of last year, the city announced a major court settlement against Isaac Anzarut. He is a downstate landlord who at one time owned upwards of 100 properties in the city, many of them problematic. Two things happened as a result of the settlement. One, Mr. Anzarut was banned from any real estate transactions in the city for, I believe, a period of 15 years. And 26 of his properties are being transferred over into city ownership. We're in the process of setting up closing dates on those properties. Once the city has title to them, we'll be able to. Oh, thank you, Steve. Once we have title to them, we'll be able to get inside them and take a closer look and better assess the condition of the properties. But just from a general exterior assessment, we're fairly certain that more than one property will require demolition. So with that in mind, in preparation for that, increasing funding to the demolition and blight removal program will be imperative this year because of that settlement. Another priority area remains the mill and pave program. Last year, we had an $8.3 million streets improvement program. That's to upgrade critical infrastructure across the city, repair roads, update underground water and sewer utilities, and make neighborhoods more accessible for residents of all abilities with ADA upgrades. Each year, we use some of our HUD allocation to support that work. And that helps us ensure that investments in infrastructure are happening across the city and neighborhoods on every side. And whether you live in a neighborhood with high rates of poverty or one of our more affluent neighborhoods, we want to make sure that these investments are happening at the rate that they should be and at residents deserve. So. As always, if anyone on CDAC or any of your neighbors have streets that are in need of repair, infrastructure improvements are needed, just flag them for the mayor's office or your council member to pass on to us as we continue to put together the plan for 2024. One other thing, the Human Services and Capital set aside this year as a competitive process. I guess one thing to keep in mind is the change to the minimum grant request requirement. Is it 20,000 now, Steve?
It's a minimum $20,000 for services and then I think 25,000 for capital.
For capital. So this was a change that was made or driven largely by federal regulations and just in the effort of kind of streamlining the process. So I think that the CDAC does really important work every year in weighing the merits of all the different applications that are received. And it's a hard job because there's a lot of needs out there and there's a limited amount of money. But this year, I would just really challenge you to think about, with that new minimum requirement, how can we be making the largest impact possible? And hopefully streamlining some of the grant funding. And I guess one last thing I wanted to point out, this is the same as in past years too, but we'll be looking to maximize staff salaries as we do using this funding, not only to support city departments, but also to help offset the city tax base. So this is something that we do every year, and we work closely with Steve and his office on that. Happy to take any questions or,
Can I just ask a question?
yeah.
Hi, Megan. So you said that there's there's 26 blighted properties. Do you know if the mayor's office, are they gonna apply for any grants or anything besides this? So like, I know that the money will, I know that, you'll use some of this money, but do you know if we'll apply for additional grants for this process?
Sure. So I think there are 26 properties. I think that once we take title to them and are able to have our code inspectors go inside and get a full assessment of just how bad some of the properties are, what properties are salvageable, what might be needed, if some can be rehabbed, we'll get a better sense of the need and then a game plan moving forward. Each year through CDBG, we allocate demolition money for our demo program. What's changed in recent years is that that demolition program, normally our properties came from the county foreclosure, but with the moratorium, we're not getting those properties as regularly as we had been in the past. These properties from the Ansroot settlement will likely supplant those properties. So to answer your question, I imagine that we're always looking for grant funding to support whatever projects need to happen. I can't say specifically yes or no until we get inside.
And see exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then I have another question. So then after like you assess that, do you have a plan on what you're going to do with those properties? Is it going to be like affordable housing, or you will come up with something from there? Like, will the city run it, or will you give it to an organization to kind of run the housing? Like, what were you guys thinking?
Yeah, so I think once we're able to get inside and see what, if any, properties are salvageable, we have some really great nonprofit partners in Chodos that
Yeah,
do like
good.
very good rehab work. And I can't see it being anything that the city runs, but we would look to support anything like that with funding, and how we typically do throughout those types of processes.
Okay, awesome.
Just, I will be addressing that for when I talk about housing, I'll be addressing that issue as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right. Megan, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nothing for
All
me.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings up code enforcement.
Yes, and I'm part of the 5th district. I see you every day.
Hi, good
Hello.
evening.
Hi.
Thank you for having me. I'm Chris Leiter, the Director of Building Construction and Code Enforcement. And we have allocated the funds in the past primarily towards salaries for code inspectors in the city of Binghamton. We're hoping to continue to do that again this year. We certainly would encourage CDAC to consider, how much that does to support the low to moderate income neighborhoods.
Can't hear.
Um,
She can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay. So, right, we're using the funds to provide salary compensation for the inspector who are providing services to low to moderate income housing neighborhoods. Our funding last year was $570,000. That was our salary needs, and CDGB accounted for. Okay, thank you, Steve. 234,000. So that was coming from CDGB. I'm anticipating, at least this year, is the salaries have now increased to 657,500. So a big jump in the cost to the city to keep these inspectors employed. And we certainly don't want to lose any of those necessary resources that we're using for the code enforcement program. Keep in mind the work that we do in these neighborhoods is not limited exclusively to property maintenance and problem properties, but we also provide services for building construction services, including project review, interpretations of codes and information enforcement to make sure that the planning and zoning approvals are in place, and the work that's being done is being done in a manner that provides life safety, health safety, and is appropriate to the location where it's taking place. The more common areas are the west side, north of Main, north side, center city, parts of the south side get a lot of our attention, and certainly certain parts of the east side. The activities that we've seen in 2023 really center in some of the low to moderate income census districts. Are take side of those areas for building construction, and occasionally we'll come into one of those areas, but I would say probably 80 to 90% of our efforts are going to low to moderate income neighborhoods. So just ensuring that minimum requirements are met for safe housing, and keeping the neighborhoods safe, trying to encourage development as much as we can and accommodate anybody who's interested in improving those neighborhoods. We're hoping to keep that going. So we have, certainly an enormous task every year. And each year it seems to grow. I've been tracking this now since I took over the office, and since 2019, the amount of work that comes in has grown significantly. Just between 2022 and 2023, the number of requests for service we receive just for property maintenance alone is up 31%. So I would like to say that, neighborhoods are improving and there's less need for us, but the data shows other, we're really trying to keep up with all the changes that are taking place and all the conditions that need our attention. So we're looking for, CDGB to continue funding the code enforcement program and enable us to keep addressing the problems.
I have a question.
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said about what was the increase in calls in 2023 from 2022?
Yeah, for salaries in 2023, it was 571,000.
No, the calls, you said.
Oh, the calls, yeah.
Property.
Yeah. The calls that come in last year, it was in 2022, it was just over 2,500 requests for service. And in 2023, it was almost 3,300. So about 800 more calls.
What do you attribute that to?
We did have a moratorium on evictions. And when people are not being asked to move or vacate a premise, they have little reason to report conditions that aren't going well, that are inconvenient. So when the eviction courts opened up and more evictions were taking place, there's more people who were prone to calling us and saying, I might be asked to move on, but I want to let you know on the way out, there were some things in this property that needed attention, and the landlord had not made the corrections while I was here. I just passing it on so the next tenant doesn't experience the same things I did.
Okay, thank you.
That's a guess, but that certainly correlates with the change in court activity.
Okay, and also one other thing, how many inspectors do you have in your office?
We're funded for 6. I currently have 4.
Why is that?
They tend to leave for higher salaries.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
You said that 89% of your calls went to moderate income areas.
I'm guessing 80 to 90. I don't have a mapping program.
Well, I was
That-
just
that I
going to
had a
ask,
few
do you
years
have
ago.
like a salary range as to what you would consider a moderate income area?
No, these are defined by the US Census Bureau.
Okay,
Yeah, these are census tracts that are already defined, mapped
Okay.
out.
The definition is those areas are areas that are 51% or more. The households within an area, 51% or more of them live at or below what is considered 80% of the area median income. So
okay.
we throw around a lot of alphabet soup here, but and when I
It's a
say
lot of
80% AMI,
percentages. Okay.
that's what we're talking about. So those areas are the census tracts that have a majority of people living in there are below a certain level of income based off household size.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schleider.
Yes.
Is it true that also some of the increase in calls could be because people are becoming more and more aware when they live next to someone who isn't keeping their property up to code?
Yeah.
That they can call code and code will come and try to do something about that?
That brings up a good point. Not all of the calls that we get are from tenants who are having tenant landlord disputes. A lot of the calls that we get are from single family homeowners, and they want to, report a degradation of the
Yeah.
neighborhood or a certain
Yeah.
property that is having an adverse impact on the neighborhood. So
Yeah.
you're right, we do get a lot.
I know in my neighborhood, that's the biggest reason that we
Yeah.
call,
Yeah.
that we've got people who just don't take care of their
Yeah,
properties.
vacant properties, unkept properties will certainly have a negative impact that affects not only the next door neighbor, but 3 or 4 houses away.
It affects, it affects
the
the
whole
whole
block.
street. The other question I have is, you said you have 4 people right now, you have
Correct.
room for 6.
Yes.
Is that $657,000? Does that include 6 positions?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
funding for six
Okay.
property maintenance code inspectors plus,
So this would be an increase for the existing, and then people coming in would be making a little, are we helping? Maybe trying to keep some of, get rid of some of the recidivism?
yes, and that's not really done through CDAC, that's done through.
No, I understand, but
Contract
no, from your whole,
negotiations.
from your
Yeah.
whole budget, I was just.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly, I don't know. We did actually in 2023 approach the administration and city council and negotiated increases for just about everybody in the office to try to create more success with recruitment and retention.
That's good.
They were able to grant our request and accommodate some salary increases. I honestly don't think they would have done that if we were not receiving CDGB funds, and that was coming 100% from the general fund. They would not have been able to do it. So
Very good to know, and you've
Yeah.
got some on your staff.
absolutely.
Thank you.
I have great staff right now. We'd like to get more
Keep
people of
them
the same
And
caliber.
keep them, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just wondering off the cuff if you can give me a couple of examples of these service costs that are happening in the low to moderate income areas.
Mhm.
Is it more of like handrails falling off, or is it something like a little more detrimental than that?
It's a full range of violations. I would say keep in mind that every violation that we are able to cite stems from the fire code is all rooted in fire safety, health safety. The whole idea of code enforcement is to prevent injury, illness, and death. So even something that sounds benign, like a poorly painted house or a house with, paint chipping off, sounds more aesthetic than it does, hazardous. But when we look at Broome County's lead abatement program and the lead levels, the elevated lead levels, and the children who live in low to moderate income neighborhoods, we're looking at that, or that at least the state, when they wrote the code, was looking at that as a health safety hazard. So unsightly, certainly affecting property values. But what the root of why we address it is because it's a health risk. And so everything from, unsafe exiting, unsafe handrails, unsafe stairs is a means of egress that's obstructed or not functional. So when it comes to a catastrophic event, whether it's emergency service personnel that need to use that to get into the building, or the tenants or occupants who need it to get out, we're looking at that not from just unsightly or inconvenient, but potentially leading to, loss of life or injury.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Yes.
Chair, I have one more question. Unsightly can also be dangerous. Garbage piled up in the back of a yard can make
Absolutely.
rodent problems and
Yeah.
things like that. And my question to you is,
Yeah.
I know that in my neighborhood, we have certain houses like that. and
Mm.
There have been complaints made and nothing has been done. Is
Yeah.
this a failure of the next step after you guys get done with it?
It's, you know,
I know it's a difficult question, but it's one I
not
wanted
really.
to
I
ask.
I mean, I've been here for 17 years and I've had long enough to, answer these questions and evaluate them from both an inspector and from the director and try to figure out the best way to answer it. And I think the best way to answer it is that we have the ability to compel people to do the right thing. I think the title of our department's a little misleading when we say code enforcement. There's this notion that there's this ability to do more than just compel. And in the reality, not even the courts have the ability to do anything other than to compel and create a perceived consequence that would incentivize somebody to make the corrections. There's really no way that we could do it, ourselves as a city, go paint the house for them and then bill them for it. So the tools that we have are such that we can, respond to a request for service, make observations, document them, provide proper legal notification, and provide the due process that's afforded everybody. And at the end of the day, if they don't comply with our order to remedy, then they do go to the courts, and the courts, even our judges are not, really able to force someone to do something if they really feel like the penalty and the fine is less than the amount of effort that it takes to fix the issue. That's where our authority ends.
Thank you. I appreciate the insight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deb, did you have a question?
Yes, Chris, one of the things that we learned last year is a bifold pamphlet was created to allow homeowners or occupants resources to bring that into compliance. Is that being distributed?
Yeah, actually, that's, part of the visitation process right now is to either put one directly in someone's hands or to leave it at the property so that it can be received by the occupant or the owner or both. And it's, we even have a way of documenting what occurred during the distribution of those pamphlets. And one of the selections is, refused to take it, refused any help from code enforcement. And that's seldom the box that gets ticked. More often than not, we're able to leave a list of resources that are available both to the occupants and the owners. It wasn't only the pamphlet that you saw, which is very, very concise set of data as far as what kind of resources are out there, but we've been working closely with the Broome County Health Department, who has a healthy homes program aimed at reducing exposure to lead paint. And so there's resources for both property owners and for occupants, either to receive financial aid or actually free products is the case for occupants, so that they can have the cleaning supplies, the fire safety equipment, the smoke detectors, the things that they need that they may not be able to afford to maintain a healthy home. So we really do go out of our way to provide some kind of assistance that is at low cost or no cost to the responsible party to help them bring the property into compliance.
Okay, and that checklist would be available for each of the properties that have been cited.
Yeah, any property that was visited by our office was given the opportunity to receive the pamphlet. And if it's an exterior property inspection and there really isn't anybody at the property that's requesting services, then we are able to leave it either affixed to their door, kind of stuck in the door like a political flyer on the door handle in the mailbox. Actually, I'll correct. I don't think we put it in the mailboxes, but we can leave it on the door.
Okay, this is just to make sure that it is indeed being given out and possibly also in the mailing that goes out with the citation, that might be beneficial as well.
That's a good idea. We haven't done that yet because it's by that point, it's replication of a service that was already provided. So at the initial inspection, the pamphlet would have been provided. There are occasions where maybe the person who received it was not the owner. And if we wanted the owner to have that same information, we could include it with the notice of violation, so the owner has a copy as well.
I think that might be useful going forward, because I think it's a wonderful brochure and was actually able to provide referral with that. So
Not a bad idea, right? We'll take that, I'll take that up with the other supervisors.
great. Thank you so much. I
Sure.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Hello.
Hey.
I'm curious about the calls
Mhm,
and kind of what percentage of the calls have merit
mhm.
when you show up? And I'm also curious whether you'd be able to speak upon what's the education of the public about code enforcement? Are they calling you appropriately? Are they calling about right things, or are you showing up and chasing your tail for things that aren't really violations?
Well, I mean, I would say the majority of them, and I don't have data to support this, but anecdotally, I would say the majority of the calls that come into the office are justified. They're founded. We do have a status drop down so that we can see exactly what transpired during the calls. And there is one, status of unfounded, basically meaning that there was no cause to cite this person. We did go to the property and make observations, but what we saw was not of a nature that we have the authority to address. That's a small percentage of them. An even smaller percentage of them are calls that have to be directed to another department or to another municipality or another agency. And, we consider ourselves kind of the Swiss Army knife of public contact. It's the first number that comes up for some reason. So we'll get complaints about everything that's pertinent, all the way down to things that are probably better handled by the health department, bad experiences at restaurants and things like that. So we do our best to make sure that we put them in touch with the department or the agency that would be helpful to them. But we get them all. Yeah.
I have one more question
Sure.
because the mention of lead and children came up. And so I was wondering if there is a mechanism to kind of have units where kids are not allowed to live because there have been so many instances of lead poisoning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's handled by the Broome County Health Department. They
Okay.
do have a process to declare a property unfit for habitation based on a lead paint violation or the presence of lead paint to the extent that it could not be mitigated in a standard reasonable amount of time. So I've seen 6-unit apartment buildings closed while the property owner is abating the lead or encapsulating it, so it's no longer a hazard. And we all realize that even the most well-intentioned landlord may not have the funding to make that happen. And that's where the Broome County Health Department, in receipt of a very large grant over the next 3 years, I believe it's in the $5 million range, to make resources available to landlords. Because, the last thing we want to do is remove good housing otherwise from the housing market. Something that's well-maintained and safe, shouldn't be removed as a, potential place for families to stay. So having the health department go through these properties, identify the hazards and help the landlord mitigate it so that we can get it back up and running again. That's their specialty. The Healthy Homes program, they've always had a lead paint program, but they've titled it now Healthy Homes, and they are really to make that money available and to keep those housing units available to the citizens that need them. Yeah.
I have another question.
Yes.
You said that a lot of times, sometimes a property owner would rather just pay the fine as opposed to dealing with the property issue itself. Do we have a scale of what the fines start at, or what the standard fine may or may not be?
The fines as outlined by New York State and City of Binghamton range between $50 and $500. And it really depends on the strength of the case, the severity of the violation. Sometimes the consequence is really more of a natural consequence. So if we have a property that was in such lack of maintenance and in disrepair that we had to declare unfit for habitation, we would both make the declaration, what we call, condemn the property, and we would bring the owner to court for not making it habitable for its occupants. So two things happen. The occupants leave the property because it's no longer safe, and the landlord loses that income. And then they come to court and they may pay a fine, any ranging between $50 to $500. And that could be per violation. So somebody with, 6 violations, that could be 3,000.
How long is the process to go from, okay, you didn't pay this fine to condemning the home? How
Well,
long does that process
the
take?
condemnation is based on the habitability of the structure, not so much paying a fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's usually when something is dangerous and unfit for habitation, it's a pretty rapid process. Something that's egregious would be given 48 hours to correct. And if corrections weren't made, then the condemnation process starts. That takes about 10 days. So within 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're so bad that you really think, that we're really saying they're unsafe to live in now while I'm looking at it, while I'm
Right.
inspecting it. And the goal is to remove somebody from exposure to a hazardous condition as quickly as possible.
Okay.
But then the landlord, has the same amount of insurance and the same amount of property taxes and the same amount of expenses with zero income. So sometimes that's a bigger financial burden than the fines that they occur in court.
Okay. I was just thinking of some specific properties in my neighborhood that just like, they're single family homes and they have like garbage and stuff like that in the backyards.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the house is the issue.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so what do we do? Cause if the
that-
maximum fine's only $500, like, oh, I'll write you a check.
Well,
no
I mean,
problem. Like,
that is, the maximum fine in court for the case, for a specific case like you're mentioning. I mean, a garbage violation isn't just unsightly. It is the
right.
it is
rodents,
attraction
pests,
of
things like
rodents,
that.
insects, and infestation. It could be a fire safety hazard. It could be, an unsafe condition for anybody, anybody who's using that space. We do have a mechanism in the city that if those types of violations, high grass, snow and ice on the sidewalk or garbage aren't, remediated immediately, then we do have, departments in the city that will go and perform that work for them. And, the Public Works is in the office today talking about a job that they just completed to remove trash and garbage from our property to the tune of $8,000. That cost goes directly to the property owner, and if it's not paid, then it goes on their taxes.
Oh,
So
okay.
that isn't really a court sentence, but that is another penalty, financial penalty that
Yes,
takes
one of my
place.
neighbors got hit with one of those fines because the DPW came and removed stuff off of
Yeah.
their property. and
I
they
mean,
had
at
to pay a
that
couple
price,
thousand
they're
for
they're
that.
using heavy equipment to remove,
Okay,
that much debris.
okay.
So yeah, there's many consequences to not maintaining a property.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anything further? Seeing none. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
We're gonna make a switch to our agenda and bring up planning now so that Julia doesn't have to sit here and wait through all the HUD stuff when Stevens sits on the board. Thank you. Welcome.
Nobody can ever hear me, so let me know if this is good.
Deb, can you hear her?
All right, well, even closer. Hi, I'm Juliette Burling. I'm the Director for Planning, Housing and Community Development. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about what we do with planning, what we've done with your support in the past and what we'd like to do in the future. Okay, so planning, housing, community development. Our section, this section I'm talking about mostly tonight is the planning, zoning, and historic preservation. Steve is our HUD administrator and does the housing and HUD administration work. So we have a budget provided by the city that covers our personnel lines, our basic support for the office supplies. Everything in addition to that, for reports and studies and plans, either we find grants or the city will fund that, or we've come to CDAC in the past for that, but that's all extra. So we don't have a budget line specifically for that. Let's see. But to give you a little bit of a background of what we do, so my office runs the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the city, the Committee on Architecture and Urban Design. We do have a Shade Tree Commission, but it's not funded. With these commissions, we work with developers who bring applications to us for review and approval. We meet with developers before the application process if they request it. We work with developers to make sure that the projects they're wanting to put into place are that they know all the answers basically to put on the application. So we work with them to get, hopefully to get approvals. The developers can't go to building code and construction until they have planning approval. So once that, then it goes over to them for permits. We also we manage sign permits, fence permits, and outdoor cafe permits. So we do a lot. We also deal with a lot of housing needs, housing issues. We manage a couple of grants that rehab homes for single family, low moderate income individuals. You have to be income qualified, make it through the intake and be on the list. So I was listening to Chris. We also managed to get a lot of the calls for people needing assistance, which we, help the best that we can, but we use that to direct programs, to meet the needs of pretty much the community. And a lot of the calls that we're receiving is I'm being evicted and I have nowhere to go. We need housing. We need temporary assistance. What can you do to help? So we created that community resource guide that Chris's staff is handing out to help people, give them a whole list of who to call for food, clothing, and housing assistance. And we're hoping with some of our projects to create additional, to expand, I guess, the availability of affordable housing. So, all right. We also are in charge of historic preservation. I don't mean to say in charge, but we work with developers and people who want to restore properties in historic districts and local landmark properties. That goes through our Committee on Architecture and Urban Design. That committee also reviews projects that the city is proposing on city-owned land. So they do have a review process for that as well. All right. It's more interesting than it sounds. It really is. Let's see. We also manage a lot of grants, either grants we've applied for that have been applied for on our behalf. They run from the DECO district, which is the Downtown Entertainment and Cultural Opportunity Area. I think that's what DECO stands for. The green infrastructure, street improvements, complete street improvements. We're designing new connections and improving the walking trails at Ross Park. We have about 11 grants right now going on in our office. Let's see. We also, one of the grants was proposing expansion of historic districts that was funded by you guys. Identifying new historic districts, that was a CLG grant for the new Main Street Historic District grant. We just completed a survey of educational properties for school district for nomination for national listing. And that was very well received by the state. And let's see, we'll have a lot more, but I just want to jump to pretty much what we've done with the funding from CDAC in the past has been the historic district projects. We still have money left in that line to spend, so I'm not asking for more for that. But,
Excuse me, Julia,
ma'am.
what did you just say? I was having a hard time hearing you.
oh, I'm
What
sorry.
was the last district that you talked about?
It was well, I was talking about what we have done with the most recently received funding. It was the historic preservation projects. So we have remaining funds in that, but we use that for the State and Henry Street Historic District expansion. When you're in a historic district, you are eligible for historic tax credits for projects on your property. If you're next door to a historic district, you're not eligible, but you still have to comply with the development restrictions. So the properties in between kind of are negatively impacted. So we expanded the district. We're currently looking at having a study of municipal buildings for historic value, potential nomination to the register. The fire stations, jump out. This building technically could qualify. But once they have a listing, there's more protections available to them to keep them from being demolished or renovated in an unsympathetic manner. So that's what we're doing with some of the money you've given us already. I have a list of things we'd like to do that we have not applied for grants for. I'm not entirely, I just kind of came up, ballparked some numbers. We need a complete streets plan for the city of Binghamton. What this would do is review the streets and see which ones are eligible in terms of width and which ones would be most appropriate to create corridors. A complete street is a street that's not just designed for vehicles, but also includes pedestrians and bikes in the actual design of it, not as an afterthought, not with a diamond in the middle saying share the road, not safe. So I'd like a complete street plan for the entire city, an open space inventory that looks at not just parks, but open public spaces, parkland, just open space, green space that's not in a park, just so we have a complete inventory of what we have in existence and then develop a management plan for that property. It's a good way to see what we have and what we can do with it to help bring more recreational opportunities and to reuse some not programmed urban spaces, to be honest. And a lot of these projects, are in the central area. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. I'd also like to have a municipal solar energy study done. This would conduct solar energy, I'm blanking on the term, but how much energy could be produced on each building top of municipal buildings, just to see if it's even a potential. So until we have that energy analysis, energy production analysis, we wouldn't even know what we have to work with. The council chambers, we had a green roof installed, but there's slanting windows. Maybe we could do a solar panel. It wouldn't generate enough to run the city, but it could generate a lot to offset building cost. So it's let's see. Okay. So talking about which populations would be, benefit from some of these plans. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. A complete street review plan, a survey, and then an actual design. It makes it safer and easier for people to walk and to bike. It increases the amount of mass transit. It would include a bus stop survey to see if they need to be adjusted, if the bus stops are still in areas of high need, high use, or if that use has changed. It makes it easier for people that aren't vehicle dependent or are without a vehicle. Makes it safer too. And the open space inventory just brings recreation back into the community and it's free. So it gives people other opportunities. I teach at the university and my students say the one thing we need downtown is more recreational space. So we have a lot of bars, nightclubs, but there's nowhere to go and play Frisbee, or to just be outside. There's no basketball courts, there's no open space, not enough. Okay. They also want a grocery store. That's another story. Okay. So those are the things I'd like to do, and most of those studies wouldn't be extremely expensive. The cost comes when you develop plans. So when the complete street study would just give us a good understanding of which streets could be closed to vehicles, have, a zero emission target or a reduced use. 75,000 typically will cover the design and the study. If we're gonna have actual plans drawn, that just about doubles it. So, but until we have those initial surveys and studies done, we don't know if it's even worth pursuing. So with those studies done, we can apply for additional grants. It gives us a lot of leverage that way. So I'm basically not asking for more money, I guess, from you guys. I still have a good amount in the historic preservation project, enough to cover the two things we want to do. And I think there's only 2 of us in my office who technically qualify for to have some of our salaries times offset. Creating the plans is eligible, but implementing them is not. Most of what we do is implement the plans. But we also create a lot. We just finished the climate action plan. It's going to be a good one. But I have a list of things. I don't know. Steve's not going to be happy with me. I don't know if these are eligible expenditures, but the things that I would like to do if we could get funding for them, a couple of them go along with our rehab program where we fix code issues with single family, low moderate income households. And we also do non-luxury upgrades like bathrooms and kitchens and ADA compliance alterations. These properties are very often, what they call it, delayed maintenance, but it's obvious that the people living there need help beyond just that. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to do to get their homes back up and running, but all right. I'd like to be able to provide needed furnishings that go along with those properties. And I don't know if we can do that, but new mattresses. Mattresses are expensive. Replacement mattresses would go a long way to reducing bed bugs, lice, other issues that people have to deal with. Bedroom furniture and washers and dryers to keep clothes clean and off the floor would be a huge help. Desks for studying in bedrooms or in living rooms, but a separate place to study, a quiet place, really is tremendous. You're gonna laugh, but dining rooms, kitchen tables and chairs, living room furniture, it creates a place of gathering, a central place. Okay, now Steve's giving me the look already. Okay, bicycles. People that don't have vehicles have a hard time.
Work.
Yeah. And bicycles, helmets and locks with baskets would give people the independence to shop, to run errands, to go to the laundromat, to get to school. Bus passes. I know that you can buy a bus pass for a month or a year and it adds up, but paid bus passes would give people the dignity to be able to go to the grocery store and back. I can pay for my daughter to Uber because she doesn't drive and she lives in a college town and it's not cheap. I bought her a bike. The other thing is I don't know if shopping carts that you pull behind you, they're so useful. My neighbors have them for groceries and for laundry. But I think what I would really like to do, in addition to all of that, is I don't know if you're allowed to have a programmatic expenditure, creating cooking classes and a home economics class. in a public center, a library. Just providing this instruction to people on a limited income really helps money go farther, which creates a sense of independence. So I don't know if any of those are eligible, but that's what I would like to do. So those are the that's what I'm going to look for in terms of funding grants. Because there's funding available for demolition, renovation, and construction, but the living necessities, you know, there's not a lot for that.
Quality of life.
And that is so important. So,
So I have a question if you're taking questions
ma'am.
yet.
Mhm.
Okay, so I didn't even realize that your department had the capacity to do that type
Well,
of.
we don't, but we're
Okay.
overworked, but yes, we do it. Sorry.
So under what program would you possibly give someone a shopping cart or a new mattress or something like that?
I would associate it with our housing program.
Okay.
And when we go into a property, I don't, but our housing rehab coordinator is also a, code inspector. We just hired him over from code. That's when they can take an inventory of need. We would just create like a separate avenue, but that's the first, person going into the structure to see, living conditions. And if we had a separate pot of funding, we could just tie that into that program. So yes, we're going to renovate the home. We're going to fix all the electrical issues. We'll give you a new furnace. We're going to do the new roof, a new bedroom, new mattresses, and just do the complete project.
That's amazing. Due to rising costs, right, the cost of
Mhm.
living, I noticed that we have more and more people who with disabilities, but also senior citizens
Mhm.
who are having a hard time, making ends meet, and
Mhm.
that dignity piece
Yeah.
is really falling to the wayside.
Yeah, it is. It has. And I have a number of friends who work for social services, and you can't get assistance to people until a case is opened. And they don't have enough people that have been trained and qualified to open cases. So the cases are piling up. Exactly. And they can't get any, I know that they're supposed to have them turned over in like 15 days. They have some since November. So it's a huge issue. So, yeah. But you're gonna buy groceries before you get a new mattress, even though you have a problem with a mattress, right? Because they're like $1,000 or more, a lot more. But so that's my wish list. So
And then, I'm sorry, and then how would you monitor that? Like, would it be like like what is the process for someone to receive any of those things?
well, I mean, the rehab and construction projects, we have a built-in process for, if it's a single family home, they have to live within it for 5 years, I think. And after 5 years, the little part that they owe on it, it's a mortgage. It's no payment, no interest. And after 5 years, it's reduced by 60%. So 40% might remain out of a $10,000. So 4,000 remains on that. For the furniture putting in, I wouldn't monitor. I'm not sure if we would need to track it.
No, or just like how would like a person, like what would be the process? I know like with anything, if you're giving something or, doing something, sometimes they have stipulations on
Uh-huh.
a process where,
Right. Well, we have an application right now
Okay.
that's fairly generic that we
Okay.
would just tweak to fit this separate program. And it's based on income. So once a person is income qualified, then we can open up to other programs that are available. We just started an energy upgrade program for low moderate income individuals that will replace your furnace, washer and dryer, your kitchen appliances. We have a list, anything that uses energy that's 10 years older. And it's a simple application. So, and most of it, they either can call us or call Metro, and Metro Interfaith right now does the intake, and then the process gets turned over to our office after that. But I would just tie it right into that. We have an existing system, we just tweak it. So, I thought you meant how would we track? Because once we give people a bicycle, that, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
can't.
just, thank you. and,
Right.
You keep it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand.
Any other questions, John?
Yeah, I guess my question is a little bit bigger picture. You know, you highlight a lot of good things that your department does, but I feel like your job and your access to students also gives you
Mhm.
unique perspective
Yep,
that we could use to think about other programs that we're funding and
yeah.
stuff like that. So I'd be curious, what does your ideal Binghamton look like?
Well, downtown Binghamton is, I haven't done the full count yet. It's either 50-50 residential, retail, commercial. It's close to that, but it's not treated as a neighborhood. So downtown Binghamton needs to be recognized as a neighborhood. I don't know officially, but I would see a grocery store, a bookstore, a pharmacy back downtown, a movie theater, a bowling alley, other types of entertainment, you know,
So like third spaces.
yes.
Okay.
And I would see, don't hold me to this, but creating a connection of walkable and bikeable roads that go from one location to another that has limited vehicle or no vehicle access, or closing roads over the weekend for primarily pedestrian use. Satellite parking if necessary. I mean, it was such a small town. I don't know if we even need that, but I mean, river access is difficult because it floods. And it's flooded so many times now. We have, since I'm reviewing it for our climate action plan. I think it was 1939 is when we had our flood walls were installed for us because we were designated a flood prone community. So we can't do much with the riverfront where the flood walls are and the berms. Within 15 feet of that has to be kept completely clear of obstructions, including benches and trees and anything. So I don't know if I'd put money into that, but Sandy Beach is lovely. I would love to see that expanded, and I'd love to see it walkable. Some of the connecting trails going to that. That's what I envision. So, and sorry, building on the pavement in downtown Binghamton. We have such a huge amount of underutilized privately owned parking lots that just sit there empty. You know, if you go walking in Binghamton, you see them. It's just a sea of gray. I would love to use that for infill. So, or gardens. That's what I see. So, yeah, we're about halfway there. So.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. I have so many talking points. I'll probably have to have a telephone conversation. But
Anytime.
piggybacking on what John said with the students, and because you're in a unique opportunity as an instructor for our young people. I am the biggest cheerleader for Center City. We have Columbus Park. There's your Frisbee throwing. There's a $96,000 King Rice basketball cart that was done. We were denied the community center, which would have given you the cooking and all of that
We're
community
working on
space.
that though.
But when Amelia was here for the Vines project and when they were looking for funding for their Susquehanna and Fayette Street, that they would have community space available. And I believe in the plan, I don't want to speak for her program, but the farm to table and cooking presentations there. There might even be an opportunity to partner with Cornell Cooperative Extension. I'm very much love to collaborate and coordinate with other groups. Going back to your students, I believe that's an untapped resource in that they could provide some of the legwork, and this might be possible projects either through your class or maybe independent studies, maybe thesis, to have one of the young people that is living downtown. How can we make it better? Please do not forget about those of us who roll as well, because we are not accessible downtown. We simply are not. The sidewalks are a mess around our community hospital, around your new plan that to park at Boscov's. I won't even tell you what we went through recently, and we creatively parked, let's put it that way. I just can't wait to talk with you. I've taken so many notes. But I just think there's so much that we can do to reach out. And those different grants that you have, the energy one, please get that out into the community and add that to your
They-
brochure.
I think I sent that to the city councilman, the flyers for the energy upgrade.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so we're starting to get the word out. We just started that in January this year. But I have to tell you, I teach environmental planning and sustainable land use and development. And every year my class projects involve rebuilding sections of Binghamton, so I use them shamelessly. And I have an excellent redevelopment plan to build on inner vacant property, so. But what I've seen from my
Thank you.
students is that now all the students are wealthy. You know, a lot of the focus is on luxury student housing, and there's a lot of students living in terrible housing conditions, and they'll come to me and say, what can we do about this? And they're being threatened with being evicted, with their leases being canceled, with being kicked out if they contact the city. I tell them to go to legal aid, but that's something we need to remember is not all the students are wealthy. So, and living off campus is so much more affordable than living on campus, you know, so. Okay.
Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Julia. All right, well, thank you. Is any of that eligible, Steve?
Uh-oh.
No, it's eligible. We gotta figure out how to.
Next up to the hot seat, Stephen
Steve.
and HUD administration.
Thank you so much.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
It's weird to be over here. All right, so my name's Steve Carson. I am the HUD manager for the city of Binghamton. I am in charge of the HUD Admin and Housing Department, which is a sub-department under planning. Therefore, the department head is Juliet, who is my boss, and then me. My overall department budget is approximately 180,000. The vast majority of which is salaries for my position, a portion of the program assistant, and then all of the housing specialists and housing coordinator salaries. There are incidental ones like office supplies, safety equipment, those kinds of things in that, but 99% is salaries. We handle all the HUD grants. We also regulate departments and agencies on the use of HUD grants. So all HUD monies comes through our department. Excuse me. So the things I'm looking at, we did for a while now, we've not been actually tracking our salaries correctly. That became a finding from HUD. So we started tracking our salaries. A year after, I realized people still weren't doing it. So we had a talk with a bunch of people. And so now this year, I think we've got a really good breakdown of what actually is eligible. Other departments will be affected too. And when we do the budget, I'll have a much more accurate numbers. This includes salary and benefits, but administrative expenses, you're looking at approximately 71,000 for HUD manager. Now, mind you, this includes benefits, so don't think I'm going home with that much. The program assistant, who is Shannon, and this is actually the amount of time she spends working on HUD. Your board stipends, the single audit, which is required by HUD. We have to pay a Broome County GIS fee. And the sum total of all those administrative expenses is a little under $120,000. The next up would be what are classified as housing expenses, which can be paid for with CDBG housing as well as home administrative costs. And that would be the housing coordinator, who currently includes Cam, who's been newly put in there to replace Pete, if you remember Pete. And then the housing specialist, who's Jeff Wood in our office. And that's a total of about 117,000. So if you add up the three, the housing coordinator, housing specialist, HUD manager position, and then the program assistants, that's the 180,000. So Looking at past years, and this is going to be interesting because I actually looked at the numbers, trying to get the raw numbers. We did about $330,000 of rehab work between home and CDBG in 2023. That is approximately roughly 6 houses. That's not exactly 6 because programs may it may take more than a year, or a housing rehab may cross the year or something like that. We may have one started towards the end of the year that's not done yet, but overall it was 330,000. When I looked at what monies we still have available, we have over $1 million still available for home rehab and CDBG. Between home and CDBG rehab, over $1 million. Therefore, I'm asking you to provide no money for CDBG or home rehab, simply because we have almost 3 times the amount we even spent in the last full year. So we have money to work with. Now, I would love it if we ran it. I would love it if our programs were so popular and we were so efficient, we got everything out the board, that I was like, oh no, I don't have any money. But that tells me then we did a lot of work, and that would be a great thing. But that's not probably reality. So one thing I do want is to put a little bit additional money into the lead risk assessment. This is what we do as part of our rehab programs to check for lead safety. This is sort of a little calculation on how much more we need. We have some still, but basing off what we did last year, the amount we have this year, and the amount of time that's left in this year, we'd probably request an additional 3,000 there. So coming to home housing, as I said, rehab is 0. What I would like for the home money, other than the administrative expenses, which would go, as I said, to Jeff and Cam, I would like all that money to go into Chodos. Now, me and Julian and I, sat down and we sort of did some number crunching. If you guys remember the home APR grant, we haven't really started with that yet. I'm supposed to sit down with the mayor and go over some plans for that. We looked at some older Chodo allocations, and we figured out we actually have quite a bit of Chodo money. So the problem is home money, a certain percentage must be spent on Chodos, absolutely must. So you have to allocate an aspect of it. We haven't done a Chodo project in about a year. What we're thinking, and we're gonna go to the mayor's office, this is not a done deal. We're planning on putting all the Chodo money rolling into a giant ball and go, who wants to apply for a Chodo for $3 million to do 11 plus units? And that's kind of the goal we're looking at. That way we can possibly get, our local Chodos are great, but I think they're somewhat limited. This isn't to say the local Chodos couldn't apply. They absolutely could, but we need to stop doing these. Let's give 100,000 here, 150. We need big money to go out the door in a bigly way. So we're thinking of doing essentially what the majority of the home APR grant, I think, funding budget was for the homeless Chodo project. So we're going to take it to the mayor and say, hey, just roll it on to one big old Chodo project, and let's get a bid going out, which satisfy one of HUD's problems we've been having. And let's see where we can do with this. Talking with Juliet earlier, and this is going back to what I mentioned with Megan. One thing we'd like to do is scattered site. So take these houses and homes that we're seeing, and potentially the ones that can be saved, include those ones. So if the city gets hold of those properties, potentially using that in it. So if it's an 11 unit, I think our goal was 11 units, because once you hit 12 units, you enter an additional level of HUD paperwork. It's not that we can't do that, and we may be okay with that. It's just if we can keep it to 11, it makes it simpler. But if we have to go above, we can. But 11 units, that would be probably about 8 total buildings, combination of single and double and maybe 2 family homes, to give us about 11 units, full rehab, basement to the roof. We can put over $214,000 per unit. I think that's the current calculation. And that would allow us to really renovate a lot of properties for a Chodo. And if we put the requirement in that Chodo's got to rent those properties out to people who initially were at risk of homeless, or literally homeless, or have a history of chronic homelessness, and this is where I have to go back to home APR rules, then we may be able to address the issue we've been having, or one of the issues with chronic homelessness. So it kills so many birds with one giant stone, this might make it easier for us. And that's why I'm asking for this year's home allocation to be almost all going to the Chodo. So define the areas of population to be served. As I mentioned before, when it came to the calculations, our projects have to be for individuals or households that are at the 80% AMI. That is the area median income based off the household size. So I think currently for a single person household, it's 42,000. Don't hold me to that. And it goes up as you have more people in a household. All of our programs require that, whether it's housing or even the programs where we provide money to an agency. So all of them require that sort of 80% AMI, but there's some additional things we can do. For example, we can base it on area, like Chris was talking about with the LMI areas. We can base it off of individual people or people that are in certain, what's called limited clientele. And that includes seniors. That includes, I'm not going to spout them off, but it's illiterate adults, seniors, victims of domestic violence, adults with severe disabilities, and so on. So specific issues using CDBG funds and new positions. So the two big things I want to go through, and I'll jump to part B to sort of piggyback off what Julie was talking about. I think it would be a good idea for every year CDAC to allocate $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 even to some kind of professional study / plan. These come up every year. We're in the middle of the year. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do XYZ study, or for this project or this grant, we need to do a something study. And if we don't have money, we don't have money. I would definitely, in years like this year where we have the consolidated plan, it's going to go towards analysis of impediments to fair housing, which we just went out to bid with. But in other years, it can be things like Julia was requesting, those kinds of plans and grant applications. Those are eligible expenses, absolutely. So it can even be when economic development comes, it can be a market study or something like that. But I think it would be a good idea to get into a rhythm of just funding every year some kind of professional service or study. And that way we're kind of we're already allocating the money, and then it's just a matter of seeing in each year what we're going to do with that. And we always have something to do with that. So that was one thing. The other one would be we are looking to hire what is being called a housing community development specialist. This is a position with an estimated salary plus benefits about $60,000. What did I write down? Position would act as an agency go-to point for handling regulatory compliance. I refer to this as the subrecipient wrangler. HUD has already mentioned that we can spend roughly between $300,000 and $350,000 a year in administrative expenses, and we spend maybe $180,000, $200,000. So we're always spending way under the amount that we can spend for admin. HUD has made strong recommendations to the mayor's office and to my office. You could probably hire another person, so the HUD manager's not pulling his hair out at the end of every day. And a huge hurdle for me and a problem I've been having is just the need for someone to interact with the subrecipients. I'm not denigrating the subrecipients, and I'm not talking down to them, but sometimes they have problems understanding things I've said 30 times. So I really need someone in that position who can manage that, who can keep track of them. I've said this, and I don't know if I've said it to this committee, but I've said it to the mayor's office and other people all the times. It's sometimes really, really hard to give away free money. You will not believe how hard it is. If you have an agency that I say, please fill out this paperwork so we can give you the money, and they go, nah, how do you handle that? And that happens more than you would think in adult life. So we just really need someone who can handle them with steel gloves, clothed in velvet, so that we can make sure that they're following the requirements the HUD requires us to make sure that they're following, so that they can keep on top of them. Have you submitted billing? Have you submitted reports? What's your situation? Have you signed the contract? Why haven't you signed the contract? Have you started the project? What's the status of the project? That kind of thing. Right now, I'm having to do that in addition to reports, handling budgets, handling finance stuff, handling interdepartmental stuff, handling CDAC. So an additional person in my department doing that would be very useful. We've already had talks with the mayor's office about this that are good so far. There's been some confusion over where the position would be. But I think the mayor's office is looking at using one of the current grants that planning has for the majority of next year, but the majority of next year ends at some point. So having this being funded in CDAC and then going forward as essentially a new position that would be funded just along with the HUD manager, program specialist, that kind or program assistant, so on, would be hugely helpful. Plus, you get to meet that person because I would probably have them come to a few CDAC meetings, sometimes on my behalf. So that's what I'm looking at here. Now I'll jump ahead. When you guys are doing the final budgets, the big, wonderful Excel spreadsheet I provide, I'll have some more refined numbers, some more accurate numbers for all the departments, not just the ones that spoke today, but in the future too, code enforcement, our department, obviously, economic development, where we've finally had this full year worth of salary tracking. And so I can say, without saying, we think it's going to be this amount, we can say for sure in 12 months, they spent X amount of dollars that were CDBG eligible. So now you guys will be armed with that. Having that information, understanding how the caps work, you guys will be very truly well informed on what you can put where. It is still, though, your decision on where you want to make budget recommendations. So don't ever think that I'm ever telling you have to do this. I'll tell you what you can't do. I will never tell you what you have to do. Well, actually, I will have to tell you what you have to do if there's something that's required by law. But the budget is ultimately you. As I tell people who call my office begging for budgets, I'm not the one to talk to. It's CDAC, it's the mayor's office, the city council. I just administer this stuff. I don't make the decision of who gets what. That's not I can't. I'm as neutral as you can be in this case. So, but anyway, that's my presentation to CDAC on behalf of the HUD admin / housing department. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, Steve, but I do have an observation. Thank you very much for using the uniform information page because it was very, very useful.
I know of at least one other department that has. Yes.
It would have not only been helpful today, but it would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
We really need to.
I did send it out with the invites.
Maybe
for this.
if you get your assistant, this is the guy who follows up on this. And
I will tell you, there's a lot of times where I fire and forget simply because I can't, but really needing someone to say, hey, did you get that email I sent you? And then a week later, did you get the last 2 emails? And then a week later, did you get the last? I've described it as I want someone with a bulldog attitude in that position because someone really needs to keep on top of agencies. And I'll tell you this, the honesty, I'm not making fun of the agencies. They are swamped. They are funded very little.
Yeah.
And they're just like everybody else. They don't have enough employees and everybody's overworked. And so things get forgotten or mistaken or misunderstood. But having that position there to enforce that compliance that we desperately need would be a good thing.
One more observation for the CDAC. This is very, very, especially for new members, now that we've got new members coming on. But the other thing too, I was talking to Jordan this evening about putting a dictionary together, and we've talked about this.
Oh,
the initials. Yes, and the initials and the acronyms. I've already got a list of at least 10. So I think that's something we should work on this year too.
And I'm going to include in there CDBG is Community Development Block Grant. CBDG is what Chris Schleider calls the CDBG program.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And I just smile and nod every time he says it. Yep.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
I will. That's one of those things I'd like to get to at some point to help you guys out. Are there any other questions?
Oh,
Hey,
Steve,
Deb.
one quick thing.
Yeah.
Can you add the new energy program to the community brochure? Is that possible?
The problem with the community brochure, it's kind of out of our department hands on what's on it. It was modified after our initial release. And so our department no longer has final say on what gets put on that. It is a very much a brochure of brevity. So it sort of hits the top, I think 6 or 7 numbers to call. 2 and 1 is always the main number. And I believe since our energy, the appliance program, it sort of falls under our rehab program. I thought the mayor's office was going to do a press release, but I don't know if they have. So it's kind of out of our hands of what goes in on that brochure, unfortunately.
May I ask whose hands that is in now?
That is the mayor's office.
Thank you. We'll follow up.
Okay. Any other questions?
Anyone else?
Oh.
I do have one last question.
Hey.
So in regards to the available chotos in town,
Yes.
Yeah.
have any new ones put their hat in the ring?
Sort of, kind of, we've probably over the last 2 years, I've probably had 3 I don't want to call them agencies, 3 groups that have come forward and said, we want to do this. And I go, are you a nonprofit? Not yet. Have you handled housing development before? No. I'm like, okay, so I'm not saying you can't do it. You're just way behind the ball. You need to get a lot of these things in order. I'll give you the stuff you need for just the choto aspect of it, but you still need to be a 501c3 and you need to have some training and some experience in housing development and all this other stuff. But I do encourage them, if you can, either start working for another nonprofit that does that or seek another nonprofit and try to partner with them. So see if you can form your 501c3 and start one smaller aspect of the housing, perhaps rental management or something like that, and work with these other nonprofits. Greater Opportunity. So the chotos, I'll mention them. Greater Opportunities, First Ward Action Council, Family Enrichment Network. The Y is not a choto yet. They're really, really close to becoming a choto. The YWCA, although they do housing development already, but they haven't done a choto per se. And CPI, which is sort of the choto created by the Housing Authority. That's the one that runs the Greater Good Grocery.
What about
thing.
a land bank?
Land Bank is not a choto. I don't think the Land Bank would ever want to be a choto. That's kind of outside their scope of things, because a choto is this combination developer and land manager. And it's not just the creation and development of properties. It's also managing the clients that going into that, maintaining the properties and reporting information back to the city year after year for 25 to 40 years, depending on the length of the choto.
And so, like the land bank, they wouldn't qualify for the things that a choto would, or would
They may. Now, there's a lot of things that you have to do to be a choto. Part of it is your board of directors has to be made up of certain classifications of people, which sounds horrible when I say it like that. It just dawned on me. But like, you're supposed to have like at least 2 like low income people. You have to have like 1 renter. You've got, I mean, it's got these like very specific requirements under their board of directors. So they could, and there's other things they have to do to be a choto, but they've never come to us before. They have worked with, I know the Land Bank worked with First Ward on one property we did as a choto.
I know they're looking for funding for some of their projects.
Yes.
That they have coming up.
Yeah, it's a choto is a long-term housing development commitment. And I think after talking with HUD, they're strongly encouraging us to broaden our perspective of where to look for chotos at. That's why they recommend to us to do an RFP and then like reach out to agencies in Ithaca or Syracuse or something like that who may want to develop in the area. So that's kind of what we're looking at for this big one, because the big one we want to do may be too big for any of the local chotos. I'm not sure. I apologize. It's just done on me as I saw Marianne. Choto means Community Housing Development Organization. I do apologize for not mentioning that at first. So that's what a choto is. It's a kind of a weird a term. So were there any other questions or concerns? Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for HUD/housing? You have my recommendations, and I'll help you, of course, with this, and of course, the overall budget with the information you're getting from these groups of departments and the departments for the next meeting as well. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Carson.
Thank you. All right. Hmm? Yeah. All right, so
She's the crossing guard for the corner of Washington Street and Vestal Ave for these kids at the school, so I can only imagine what the issue is. It's probably something with traffic.
All right.
It's got a very bad problem. Now we're not even to put it before you. And
Well,
I'm
we're
gonna
not,
say-
we're not city,
I don't know what you're having. Part of the city, I belong to the city, I voted for you people, and I wanted to tell you because I've gone everywhere else to try to solve this problem. And little children might get killed because no one wants to do anything about it. It's traffic. Went to my boss, who's the police head of this, and he didn't do anything. I went to his
May I
boss.
suggest that we adjourn and then be able to handle her situation?
I don't care.
Well, I could come out if you want, we could come out and talk and discuss this. If you'd like, I am a part of city council and I can relay that to your
Well,
representative.
she's on the south side, she knows what I'm talking about.
Well,
I
yeah,
do.
that's fine, but I would be able to assist you some more if you'd like.
I think she might be able to do more because she's part of city council. I'm just a
I
representative.
just want to know what I can do to
Well,
help.
I can help you with that if you want.
She
but
would definitely be.
We could just step aside and I can help you or guide you on what the refund that you need.
Mhm. We all are.
yeah.
God bless you.
All right, so
Yes.
we have an adjustment again to our agenda. We have a member who, under the rules, the CDAC, do you want to read that rule for me, Stephen? Do you have that?
paraphrase it, if I don't remember the exact specific word for word, but the rule is if a member misses more than 50% of meetings in a 6-month period or 3 consecutive meetings, the CDAC as a body may vote to make a recommendation to city council to have that member removed. We have never done this before, even though there have been actually quite a few times where it could have been done before. Generally, I've not pushed the issue. I've talked to the member specifically or to their council member, and it's sort of been adjusted and fixed. This situation is maybe extreme at this point, so.
So we have a member whose emails bounce back. We have a member who hangs up the phone when called. And we have a member who hasn't been here since April 9th of last year. So it was brought to my seat, I guess, that we should potentially vote to remove this member to place somebody else who might actually show up and be actively involved. This member hasn't seen any of the presentations or done anything for this year. Yes. So. Yes, and the city council person was just here. I was hoping to do this with her here so she could take this to city council if we vote to remove this person. Or to recommend removing this person. So, I don't know. I want first a discussion if this is something we want to proceed with, or if we want to just let the term. Well, actually, when's your term expire?
That individual's term does not expire until the end of the year.
Okay.
2024.
Okay, I have a question.
Mhm.
So who appointed her?
Original appointment would have been whoever Kenya replaced. Because that was the,
Sophia resident.
oh, Residenti, okay, Residenti, yep.
Okay, so she's not on city council either.
Correct.
So, it's an unfortunate situation, but it seems like she's not interested in being on the CDAC. The member. She doesn't come, she doesn't respond to emails. Because she's not interested, so, and if Ms. Resonetti isn't an advocate for her, if she's not in position anymore, I have no problem recommending that she be removed from the board officially.
Anybody else?
Our
Marianne?
jobs are too important these days. This committee is a very important committee. We have to have serious people who are willing to show up and participate.
And today's meeting is an example of that, where we waited
Yes,
20 some
Yes.
minutes for quorum.
yes.
So you know, occasionally is one thing, but
Well-
to not let us know, not receive emails, to hang up the phone on me. That was my last straw.
And it seems to be the reason that we don't get those lovely calls from Shannon anymore, you know, reminding us of the meeting because of how she was treated. It's egregious. It has to stop.
Right. Well, we started the year with those calls, didn't we?
I think we stopped doing it last year. We stopped doing it last year.
Yeah.
But like in the fall.
Yeah, I think like halfway through the fall, maybe October, we stopped doing
Yeah.
the call.
Well, but she didn't come to the last meeting last year or any of the 8 fall meetings.
No,
so
no, but I mean,
She would have
it
received
it
phone
has
calls
had
after
a
that.
negative impact on everything
Oh,
we're
yeah.
doing. That's what I'm
That-
saying.
Yes, Maria,
Yeah.
definitely.
That's what I'm saying.
Your opinion or any discussion?
I very much appreciated those reminder calls. And I miss my perfect attendance. Not to say that I'm not responsible for my email and my own calendar, but it is very helpful and pleasant to have that contact with this particular city department.
There was something pre-meeting that I said I would make those phone calls if people wanted those phone calls again. Is that something we want to do if I spent my lunch and just gave everybody a ring or a text message?
This message would be fine.
Yeah.
Is that something you would want from
text
me?
would
Because
be
I will do
nice.
that.
That
Have a
would be
group
lovely.
text. Have a group text.
Yeah, a text would be nice.
Okay,
I think a group text would allow us to communicate who's going to be here, who's not going to be here, who's going to be late too.
so we make sure we have quorum.
And Mr. Chair, as the vice chair and having more time than you do, if somebody shows me how to set up a group text, I will be happy to do it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Mhm.
So back to the matter at hand. Do we have a motion to recommend to city council to remove said member? Do I have to say that? All right, so second district. Miss Dawn Ciccone from the second district, who has been absent since April of last year. Far exceeding the 3 consecutive meetings or the 50% ratio. She's 0% now for this current fiscal year, so. Do we have a motion to recommend to city council to remove her?
I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion just that we advise city council to have her removed from Cdac.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, now we have a vote. Show of hands or just say aye?
Aye.
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 Any noes? Or abstentions? Seeing none? It is unanimous.
So I will find out when, how that works. Like if I have to put an RL in, you may have to come as the chair to make the recommendation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, timing wise,
awful.
unless you all, it sucks is even with expedited, because today is Wednesday, I couldn't do anything until tomorrow, which means it can't go on the next city council meeting unless, and I'll reach out to Kenya to see if it can, if she can do something quicker and find out, but I'll let you know, and the body as a whole know if what that comes to. So if there needs to be any additional stuff, because the next meeting is, I think, the 21st. And then that's going to be too soon for there to be enough time to have city council do the full, I put in the RL, it goes to the board business meeting, even expedited, it can't be done with that period of time, so.
All right. So let's do our final attendance. Starting, oh. I was gonna say starting with Deborah, but she just disappeared.
Well, she just
Oh,
said-
there she is. We'll start with Deborah, who's coming to her microphone.
Deborah Hogan, mayoral appointee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ann Callahan, mayoral appointee.
John Brunza, mayoral appointee.
Ebony Hato, District 4, Secretary.
Justin McGregor, District 7, Chair.
Michelle O'Loughlin, at-large appointee.
Jordan Trice, fifth district.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
And do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Next.